Hi guys, my name is Krish Kataria. This is my K-pop final project, and the movie I selected was A Small Ball Shot by a Midget. I really like this film, and I hope that as a result of this video, you guys also get interested in watching it. So, in order to make this more interactive, I decided instead of using something like Google Slides, I made my own website that allows you to see different scenes and different images throughout the movie, and also gives you some background on most of the high-level concepts of this movie. So, let's start off with the director. Um, so the director Lee was an award-winning South Korean film director, and he is specifically known for blending social critique with poetic visuals. He was born in Japanese occupied Korea in 1940, which definitely plays a role in his movies. And before he entered film, he was actually a screenwriter and spent a decade as an assistant before he was able to become his own director. Um, he was part of the 1970s Korean New Wave, which means he was known for experimenting with different cinematic expressions and was a lot more unique in that aspect compared to other directors of the time. And I also have these annotations, this website where you can click the plus and it'll give you like a fun fact or more information. And in this case, it mentions that this director made his debut with the movie Lost Season, and he gained commercial success with his movie Mommy, Star, and the Sea Anemone. And yeah, that's it for this slide. So, more information about the release date and background. So, the film was actually released during South Korea's rapid industrialization under that president, and it was influenced a lot by a novel known as The Dwarf. And that novel was actually socially a critical work about the human cost of rapid urban development, and this definitely plays a huge role in the film. This is a very unique movie for the time, as the screenplay actually had to pass the government censors twice, due to its sensitive content, as it was produced under like an authoritarian regime. So because this film aimed to become like a social critique, it kind of had to have a mix and a good blending between social injustice and also being like a family related melodrama, so that it could actually be passed as a movie. And another fun fact is that this again is based off The Dwarf, and The Dwarf was also a critical commentary on the human cost of South Korea's rapid urban redevelopment. This film also highlights this a lot. The whole idea and the whole key concept behind this film is how the rapid urban development of South Korea at the time affected this one specific family heavily. As for the cast generally follows like one specific family. You have the father who is played by Kim, and he's basically a very small person who's the patriarch and a very proud person of his family. What happens to him is that after losing his job, he finds he has a lot of struggles with getting work because of his dwarfism, and people really judge him based on his size. We also have the mother, who's portrayed as a very compassionate and resilient woman, and we also have the two sons and a daughter. And the daughter is especially important throughout the film because she actually gets involved with the real estate agent for her family's sake, thinking that getting involved with him would be able to get them housing. And a fun fact is, one of the actors of this film who plays Young Soo went on to become one of Korea's most revered actors, uh, partly due to this movie. A general synopsis is that this film follows the father and their family, who's very poor, and they're a very loving family and they're very tight, but their peaceful existence is completely shattered when they receive an eviction notice, which basically says that their village is going to be demolished for redevelopment. The family cannot afford the new apartments being built, so this puts them in an impossible situation to try to find housing before their building gets completely shut down. And since this website is available for anyone to go on, if you want, you can also click the want more button and you can get more information about the film. And more information for the tragic turn throughout the movie is that as eviction day approaches, desperation sets in, and the daughter makes a heartbreaking decision to sacrifice herself for the real estate agent, hoping to secure housing for her family. And later in the film, she actually does actually secure housing, but meanwhile, the mother shows extraordinary compassion for the workers that are demolishing her home, showing how good and nice of a person she is. And the family eventually is like kicked out of that house, and in the film's devastating climax, what happens is Kim, the father, climbs a factory smokestack and he launches a small ball into the air, and this, or actually it's a paper airplane, I think. But it kind of shows defiance before later on in the movie where we assume that he committed suicide right after launching that paper airplane into the air. Giving some more historical context into this movie, based on my perspective and also the research that I did at the time, was I found that the film very heavily critiques South Korea's rapid economic development of the 1970s, and it very much critiques the human cost that we had under this authoritarian rule, because poor neighborhoods were being completely bulldozed for redevelopment. Um, Thousands of families, all being low income, were being displaced because they couldn't afford the new housing, and government censorship made it very hard to be directly critical to the government. So filmmakers likely used melodramas in order to actually convey their message while still getting it passed by the government censors. Some key themes that play a big role in this film. So, one of the biggest films that plays a very large role in this film is the cost of modernization, and this is heavily highlighted as the film constantly questions the viewer on whether the progress gained is worth the human toll it takes. Because throughout the whole movie, we get a front row seat into the suffering and the human toll that comes out of this modernization, and I think this is especially important because nowadays we completely take for granted how modern our places are, and we never consider the hardships that people went through to get here. Um, Again, I think the movie really stresses the viewer to think like, was it really worth it? Was the modernization that we have today worth this human suffering? Another large theme is family and dignity, because the family is very tight throughout the movie, and it kind of highlights how maintaining love and their moral integrity helps them throughout their struggles. Another key theme highlighted is social prejudice versus human worth, which is portrayed through the father's dwarfism, which serves as a metaphor because society basically just labels him for his height, but the film shows that he has an enormous heart and he has crazy work ethic, and really it just shows how bad the social prejudice was for the father. Finally, resilience and resistance are demonstrated as each family member resists injustice in their own unique way. And although their efforts are kind of overwhelmed, it's very inspiring to see how resilient they were and how much they had resistance. So, kind of zooming in more on the small ball scene, just because it's a very big scene. Um, and this is basically the title's meaning, where it comes from. So this scene, again, I mentioned earlier, is that Kim climbs up like a factory chimney into the air before what is his suicide, and what happens is that he throws this small, I think it's actually a paper airplane, into the sky as like a last act of defiance, and later on the family members realize that he committed suicide. And I think this is really a good metaphor for little people trying to be heard in a system that overwhelms them. So this is really symbolism of how sometimes people are so overwhelmed and oppressed in their own in their own system, and still they can commit these final acts of defiance, and still they can make their mark no matter how small or temporary it is. And finally, what I learned from this movie, watching this film taught me about just how bad the human cost was behind South Korea's economic miracle, which is something again I think is really overlooked today. More specifically, it reveals how the development completely overlooked social welfare and caused very vulnerable communities. Even if it seems like the final outcome could potentially be worth it. As a result of this film, I gained really deep empathy for marginalized people, and I finally understood how important family bonds are, because if they didn't have these family bonds, it would have been so much harder for them. But as a result of these bonds, they had a source of resilience with each other amidst hardship. I was also struck by how how the characters in general maintain dignity and kindness even when faced with cruelty. One example being the mother feeding the workers, which I mentioned earlier. And yeah, that's pretty much it. This is my project. I really enjoyed this movie, and if you haven't watched it, you should definitely watch it and check out my website. Thank you for watching.